Hey everyone, this is Jason Ferrara with Full Circle Insights. Thanks for joining us today. I see people are actively joining, so we're going to start at a few minutes after the top of the hour, maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes after the top of the hour. So hold tight and we'll let some people continue to join. Thanks so much. Hey everyone, we've got some people still actively joining, so give us about one more minute and we'll get it kicked off. I just want to get as many people who can jump on as possible. Thanks. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar today. Today's topic is building a data-driven marketing culture. We're going to talk all about exactly how to build that type of culture, the type of data that drives that culture, and what that culture, what a data-driven culture really is and really means. So this is who's on our panel today. I'm Jason Ferrara. I'm the CEO of Full Circle Insights. I'm on the right. I'm joined by Gavin Griffiths, who's our product marketing manager here at Full Circle Insights. Gavin, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. It takes a second to find the unmute button sometimes, so I totally
Yes.
get it. Just so everybody's aware, in terms of our areas of expertise, so I'm the CEO of Full Circle Insights, but really my area of expertise and most of my career has been spent as the chief marketing officer of a number of technology firms. Most of the content we talk about in these webinars, I've actually personally experienced and have firsthand knowledge of many of those things. So they're fun topics to talk about, and I can either share your pain or share your success, the way you however you think about it. And Gavin has spent much of his career at Full Circle implementing our clients, working with them on solving their marketing attribution problems, really helping to get over the challenges that they have in terms of marketing attribution and full funnel visibility. So we've been through much of this, much of the content in these webinars, and have, like I said, have that firsthand knowledge. So that's just a little bit of background on us. And just quickly, some background on Full Circle Insights. I don't know how familiar you may be, but at Full Circle, we think of ourselves as helping this situation that I'm almost 100% positive we've all had, which is that uncomfortable moment where somebody asks us, how's our marketing working? Or where are the leads in the funnel? Or, that super dreaded topic of what's the ROI on all of our marketing, right? Like that is tremendously painful for most of us because number one, we don't have the answer most of the time. And number two, we sort of guess at it, which is a little bit worse. There's a little bit of uncomfortable conversation there, and that makes it a little bit worse. And so what the focus of Full Circle Insights is answering those questions, right? We want to give you the confidence to plan and evaluate and optimize your marketing data so you really understand the attribution and the view inside that funnel, right? When you do that, you're able to optimize your budget, optimize your campaigns, which optimizes your budget, which drives revenue. And that's just a little bit on Full Circle Insights, what we do. So let's get into building a data-driven marketing culture. So today we're going to cover what a data-driven culture is and how you can create one. The second thing we're going to do is talk about how you put data at the center of your marketing story, right? What does that mean? What is that data? How do we talk about that data and make sense of it? And then we're going to talk about some of the KPIs that will be relevant for your marketing efforts. So those are really three areas of expectation. You should be able to come away with some ideas around those three bullet points. But first, I want to get to know you in the audience a little bit better. So I'm going to launch a poll here, and I'd like to know, what is your role, right? What is your role in your company? You can just go ahead and vote on your role there. It could be marketing operations, CMO, demand generation, Salesforce administrator, or IT. I see that there we go. We got some votes coming in. We'll leave it for just a few more seconds here. All right, I think I'm about where I'm going to be with responses from all of our attendees. So we'll close that poll and we'll talk about it quickly. And that's I think you're now seeing my desktop, which is full of pictures there. Let's go back. Okay, so what's your role? 100% of you on the call today are marketing operations. So that's great for us to know. As Gavin and I are talking through these topics, it is really great for us to understand your role in marketing operations and apply our conversation to what you're going through in marketing ops. All right, so poll number 2. How aligned is your data team? Are you totally aligned? You agree on all the key data, the go-to-market process, you're gathering insights? Are you partly aligned? We know what we want, but we are having a little bit of a hard time delivering on that, or we're not aligned at all. Who's tracking? You're tracking? I'm tracking? Who's tracking? Right? So that's what I am interested in knowing. Let's see, we'll launch the poll here. How aligned is your data team? So let this go for just a second. Get some responses there. Totally aligned, partly aligned, not aligned at all. We're getting there. We're adding some responses, which is excellent. And I think we are about where we're going to be. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. You'll see my crowded desktop again one more time, and now we'll get back to the poll. All right, how aligned is your data team? So 67% of you said partly aligned. We know what we want, but we're having a hard time delivering. Or we know what we want and we deliver some things. I would say probably you're thinking multiple things about being partly aligned. And then 17% of you said you're totally aligned, and the other 17% said we're not aligned at all, right? Who's tracking? You, me? What's going on? I don't know really know. That's great, because I think that the content we've created here will help with partial alignment. It will certainly help with not aligned at all. And if you're totally aligned, I think what we've got here are ways for you to look at the business and maybe say, oh, there's an idea I didn't have. Here's something we didn't think about originally, an area of alignment that we would like to dive into. So that's great. Thanks so much for participating in those polls. It really helps us as we understand who's out in the audience. Great. So let's start with what exactly is a data-driven culture. So I can tell you that there are too many words on this slide, but what is most important here, I think, is this last sentence. A data culture equips everyone in your organization with the insights they need to be truly data-driven and tackling your most complex business challenges, right? That's why we want to create a data-driven culture. So we have to practice data-driven behavior. We have to value strategic data use, and we have to encourage sharing and community. And to me, that last point is what's so important about building a culture, right? If we're talking about building a culture, we're really talking about behaviors, and values, and practicing that. And so we have to actually encourage sharing. We have to encourage experimentation. We have to encourage failure in some way. We have to encourage speed, right? And when we do those things, we're able to build some community around that information. So 5 steps, like 5 steps for doing that, right? This is from a Harvard Business Review paper published a few years ago, but I thought that these points were particularly still valid, right? So data-driven culture starts at the very top. I mean, it is not, it is absolutely significant that I'm the CEO at Full Circle Insights and I'm here talking about this topic, because this is what we have built at Full Circle Insights. What we need to continue to engage in is that data-driven culture. Reinforce the culture that is the excitement and the interest in that data. 2 is you want to choose your metrics with care. I love this, and cunning, right? So there's a part of this which is, what are the metrics that are going to help the most? Right? I think that's choose metrics with care. You just can't populate a giant spreadsheet and expect everybody to love it and understand it. And then I think the cunning part is, what's going to be most telling? What will help build that culture? Right? So for us, for example, in terms of demand generation, one of the metrics that I look at is the conversion rate between demo and closed won business. Now, there's a little bit of cunning used in there as well, because I'm clearly stating, by asking for that number, that demos are important and closed won business is important. And getting from one to the other, that process is incredibly important to understand, define, and live by. So you want to choose your metrics with care. There are lots of demand gen metrics I could choose, right? I do track the amount of inquiries that come in. I don't particularly look at that as part of our data-driven culture, but I do expect that we know that number. But it's not really one of those metrics that I'm so focused on that'll help tell me about our process, about how we're performing. Third, don't pigeonhole your data scientists. I probably should have asked in a poll, how many of you have someone you'd consider to be a data scientist? Right? You may be laughing at that title. You may have a room full of data scientists. You may borrow someone from the finance team who acts as your data scientist. But what we want to make sure that we don't do is say, okay, data scientists, all you do is marketing data, right? The data scientists have to think beyond marketing and sales. They have to think beyond go-to-market because they're going to communicate, you're going to communicate their work to other people in the business and possibly to other, to your customers, to your partners, right? So we don't want to just pigeonhole our data scientists as you should only care about go-to-market. Like they have to have a view of the business and an understanding of the business and why we're doing this. Number four, trade flexibility for consistency in the short term. Now, flexibility is really important. We're going to talk a lot about flexibility actually in this time we're together today, but we do want to focus on consistency, right? If I'm claiming that I'm measuring the conversion rate between demo and closed won, then I need to be able to consistently measure demos run, closed won business, and the conversion rate. Now, that sounds easy. It isn't, especially as your company gets bigger and more dynamic, especially as if you have multiple channels, right? Again, you've got a direct selling channel, you've got a partner selling channel, you've got a reseller channel. Whatever that is, you're now making this process a little bit more complex. So consistency in definition, consistency in the measurement, consistency in the delivery of that number, consistency in how you explain that number, and consistency in when you report on that number, right? That's the most important thing. And you're going to learn a lot through that consistency. And number five, you want to get in the habit of explaining your analytical choices. So one is I want to explain why the conversion rate between demo and close won is so important. Well, it's important to me because I believe that when we demo a product, we tend to win, right? So that is important to know how many demos. Is that hypothesis true? Second, we spend a lot of time on demos, right? So I want to know that that time is valuable and that time is returning information, right? So if that time is great, if it's not, then I got to figure out how to adjust my process. And then when I do adjust my process based on whatever my analytics are, I have to explain that adjustment, explain that choice based on the data. I chose to change the way we demo a product because our conversion rate isn't high enough. Or, when I listened to all the demos across all of those demos and I look at that conversion rate, I picked out 3 or 4 areas that I thought we could optimize on. And I did that based on trying to boost our conversion rate. Did my changes boost the conversion rate? Yes or no? So those are analytical choices that I'm making, and we need to get in the habit of explaining those choices. So when is the right time to invest? The internet and maybe even your company is full of maturity models, right? Maturity curves are pretty normal. We have created this maturity curve really internally for us to talk about where are our best fit customers. Most of the investment in a data-driven culture begins around the scaling stage in maturity with our customers and in my personal experience. It's not that it isn't done when you are in the experimenting phase. I mean, certainly if you're experimenting, you're used to looking at data, but to build a data-driven culture really starts happening at the scaling stage between scaling and strategic. And that makes sense, right? You've got regular KPIs that you've developed and you look at them all the time in that scaling phase. Right? You are coordinating people and process and technology in a way that a less mature business may not be. So it would make sense that you're now beginning to ask those questions. You're now beginning to hire people who have experience at other companies with data-driven cultures. So this is really when you begin to see that investment. And hopefully those of you on the call, you recognize where you are here. And for those 17% that are totally aligned, perhaps you're in that strategic phase, right? And for the partly aligned, I mean, you could be anywhere along this curve. And for the not aligned at all, well, I doubt any of you are in the ad hoc phase, because my guess is you probably wouldn't be here. If it was ad hoc, you'd be, rewriting something right now instead of spending your time here. You're probably in that experimenting phase, or moving from experimenting to scaling, or in a phase where you're beginning to reinvest and do different things within the go-to-market business. So when's the right time to invest? We see it usually during that scaling phase. That's most of the time when companies are big enough to understand data-driven culture, and frankly have enough revenue to begin to build the types of tools and begin to build the types of organization that drives that culture. All right, so we've just talked a lot about what a data-driven culture is, how to build a data-driven culture, when the right time to build a data-driven culture. So let's get started talking about the KPIs and the information that you're going to need as you get on your journey to build that culture. So we're going to start very simply with alignment, right? There are a number of alignment slides here, and Gavin, this is where I'll certainly want you to jump in and add some color to some of these topics on alignment.
Yeah.
This is a go-to-market funnel. All of you on this call, I can guarantee it, have seen a funnel that looks exactly like this or really similar like this, and you probably all create one for your quarterly business review meeting on your marketing team or on your sales team, or you're asked to create one for the CMO when they go to a board meeting. You know this funnel. It's not complex, okay? Inquiry or lead, we happen to refer to them as inquiries, marketing qualified leads, sales accepted leads, sales qualified leads, closed won. If you get this funnel really represents an inbound motion, a marketing motion. If you have a robust outbound sales motion, then your marketing qualified lead stage could just say qualified leads, or maybe it says marketing qualified leads and you've got a different funnel for sales qualified leads. But I think you get the picture. This is that really simple funnel. And then I want to show an updated funnel. So, we look at the Forrester waterfall, and that's really in 2006 they developed the waterfall that's on the left. Probably a year ago, they launched this more complex green funnel on the right. And I think the significant thing here, and all of you in marketing operations most likely will experience this, have experienced it, or are getting pulled into this kind of thing, which is help us do analysis on our current customers as well. Because our current customers are interacting with our marketing. So they're either muddying the data or they are teaching you about what a current customer knows by going and consuming prospect marketing data, right? Or you are actually marketing to your current customers, which hopefully that is the case, and probably something that happens further on the maturity curve. So it doesn't matter to me what your funnel looks like, whether it's really simple, the one on the left, or whether it's more complex, like the one on the right. It really is all about define your funnel stages, align with your go-to-market team on those funnel stages. And if we're talking about current customers, your customer success team is definitely part of that go-to-market team. Oh, Gavin, you see when you talk to clients and when you're working on data for our clients, are you seeing this alignment with those clients on funnels? Where do you see that as an opportunity? Where do you see that as a challenge?
Yeah, so we commonly see a lot of alignment on this with working with clients on monitoring their funnels, and where the challenges tend to stem is like where it's different segmentations between different kinds of funnels. So like if they're associating like a campaign set of funnels for campaigns that are strictly sourced by marketing versus campaigns that are sourced by sales, versus like if they're running a partner program, that's where there tends to be some challenges on alignment. And a lot of that just comes down to kind of making sure you have consistency in the process for those rules of engagement, and then making sure that they're being accurately tracked and pulled into the funnels across the board for that. But it's just that's where we see the most consistency, though, is yeah, definitely like alignment on just identifying like what funnels are directly associated to specific campaigns to be able to get that segmentation, and then building out from there.
Yeah, great, thank you. And that's really good to bring that up, which is the segmentation, the campaigns. Like it's one of the reasons why I love showing this slide and talking about alignment on funnel stages, because I personally think this gets overlooked, alignment on funnel stages. Most people don't want to sit down and have the hour-long conversation about their funnel stages. It sounds boring. It seems pretty conceptual. It seems like, yeah, well, why do we need to talk about that? We know what those stages are. They're already in Salesforce, right? We understand that. But I think you'd be surprised when you sit down to have the conversation how much discussion there is. And that's at the marketing operations executive level. Drive that conversation all the way down to your sales development reps, your business development reps, and they'll have a totally different perception of the funnel. And so that alignment is key to building a data-driven culture, not only because you'll have the agreement, but also you will expose the notion that this is important. Like this is an important part, a foundation of our data-driven culture. All right, so once you have alignment there, we want to talk about then how to use this funnel, right? Great, we talked about it, we agree on it. Now what do? You want to identify the patterns and trends. Now, as we look at the marketing qualified leads stage, for example, there probably isn't a lot of surprise around we want to look at conversion rates from one stage to another. So MQL metrics, MQL to sales accepted lead conversion, right? But when's the last time you looked at velocity? How long does it take an MQL to convert to an SAL? This, I find, is an area that people think they talk about a lot and think they know, but don't. So most often when I ask this question, people say to me, oh, it's 24 hours, right? Because the reality is you should be responding to a lead within an hour, but that's hard to do. So most people just say, well, we do it within a day. But then when you dig into the data, you realize you don't do it within a day, because nobody's talked about what happens when one comes in on Saturday, or nobody's talked about really if my SDR team is catching inbound leads and doing outbound, well, how long does it take them to respond to a lead? So this velocity rate is really, really important. And then disposition rates, right? What happens to these people when they become an MQL? What do they do next? If they're unqualified, what do we claim? That how do we say that they're unqualified? How does the team work with that? But then also, if we look at worked and unworked, or unworked MQLs by rep, like this is part of that data-driven culture that you can really dig deep into and say, well, we have, whatever, 30, 100 reps. We can now look at how each one of those reps interacts with our marketing qualified leads, right? As it begins to convert stage to stage. And nothing will snap together the go-to-market team quite like exposing hey, I know every rep and I know how they convert from stage to stage, because I look at it every single day. Incredibly powerful for the marketing team, incredibly powerful for the sales team. And as we get deeper into the funnel, then it becomes, this sometimes becomes as marketing operations or as marketers to say, okay, well, at some point, I don't have influence over that person anymore. They're into the pipeline, right? Once the sales team has accepted that lead and it's become a sales qualified lead, me as a marketer, I lose influence there. So I don't look that deeply into the funnel. And this, I will tell you, needs to change. If anybody on your teams believes that needs to change, and that will lead to driving a data-driven culture, because the marketing team needs to care into the pipeline and into closed won business. Not only to understand like what drove closed won business, and we'll talk about attribution in just a minute, but also what's happening to the sales accepted leads. We thought this lead was awesome when it was an MQL. All of a sudden it's an SAL or it's an SQL and it's not awesome. Well, then wait, we have different understanding among our go-to-market team. So this is another area of alignment. Once you start looking at conversion rates, velocity rates, disposition reasons, same thing here with SQLs and with opportunities. Got to look at all of that stuff. And Gavin, I would imagine that you're having that conversation with our clients and how they're building out their funnels and who has this conversation, who needs to care. I would imagine your counsel to them is, hey, start caring about this if you don't now.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much more to this too, because the entire intent of this is to create that single source of truth where you have both marketing, sales, revenue ops, and all of them working off the same data set. And the advantage to this is not only are you able to effectively identify, what are your most effective campaigns that are, driving pipeline and getting things through the funnel, and like what things are not working and why they're not working, but this also relates back to sales process. So if you start noticing trends, not just things that are going well, but like if things look like they're going too well, as in, let's say in between marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, you notice a consistency where there's zero velocity, meaning that effectively they're skipping a stage and going directly into the next piece. That might be an indication that you're looking at the wrong part of the funnel to be tracking because it may not be relevant to the actual sales process. Whereas like everyone immediately is always going to focus on something where the velocity takes a huge amount of time and becomes a bottleneck on getting deals to close one. It's also good to look at things that are being bypassed as sort of say like, hey, maybe this isn't relevant information and we should focus our attention somewhere else in the process where we can make improvements.
Yeah, very good. And one thing that you're describing that I want to make sure we talk about here is that a data-driven culture, alignment along the funnel, and understanding this type of data it's what I like to call a team sport, right? This is not done by just the marketing ops team. And my guess is I can't see you in the audience, but when I say this kind of stuff is a team sport, my guess is your heads are nodding up and down, or hopefully your heads are nodding up and down, because you know almost more than anybody in marketing operations what a team sport this is, because you've been on the receiving end of when multiple people agree on something, it streamlines the process. When you get just a directive from one person, you're likely thinking, oh, I'm going to have to go back and fix this, or this isn't really what people want to see. So I think that's important. It's a team sport. And again, that's about culture. Team sport is about culture. So that when you can get people who are on that team, who wants to be a part of that team, again, that's a maturity curve thing too, right? You've got a lot of individual players when you're in that ad hoc part of the curve, and you have a lot more team players when you're more in that strategic part of the curve. So I think that's important to understand. And to me, team sports, I don't know how many of you play sports or played sports when you were younger. There's so much time spent on fundamentals, right, in team sports. I mean, if you've been around anybody learning to play basketball, like the whole process of learning to play basketball is about drills and fundamentals. And so, that's about getting the basics right. That's really what that is. So it's a team sport. You got to get the basics right. And getting the basics right is this understanding of what's my funnel? Simple, complex, and what are my metrics? Because there's important stuff going on in this funnel. And we've got to capture that important stuff and communicate that important stuff. All right, so let's start talking about attribution models, because if this is about alignment, and now you have people aligned, the next questions you're going to start to ask are like, oh man, I'm glad we're aligned. I'm glad we're looking at this data, but what does it mean? How am I doing? where's all this performance coming from? Like what I was talking about at the beginning, you sit in a board meeting, you sit in a quarterly business review. It's like, well, tell me how that event performed. Did we get any ROI out of it? And most of the time, that's to sit there with your head in your hands going, oh, I wish I could answer that question. So some of that happens when you start working with attribution models, right? You're able to answer those questions. So we're going to talk at a high level quickly here, Gavin. I'd like you just to go through, what's a first touch model and why, what's a last touch model and why, what's a multi-touch model and why would I use these things? And we'll dig into multi-touch in just a minute. So just give us an overview of those three models and the point of those three models.
Yeah, definitely. And these three are just a snapshot of literally dozens, if not hundreds of different types of models you can run, depending on what your marketing strategy is. But these are the most common ones we tend to see. And so for a first touch model, we most commonly see this used for marketers that have a very heavy-handed approach around top of funnel generation and demand gen. So for the go-to-market strategy on generating new leads and bringing in net new names into their database for the sales team to work, first touch model allows you to really identify what is the impact of marketing on bringing these people into the org. And so when you're looking at the end of the pipeline on your close won deals, when you're identifying that a first touch model allows you to basically look at across all of your opportunities and say, okay, what are my campaigns that are associated to that first touch? It's bringing in the inception of like brand new leads into our system, and what does that impact? Are we seeing are we seeing more of an impact from ads that are running through paid search advertising versus LinkedIn? Are webinars making a huge impact? That's what gives you that kind of view versus like a last touch model. These are people that are already in pipeline, so that last touch is giving the credit and awaiting towards those campaign touches that come in right before an opportunity is open. So right before something goes into your opportunity pipeline and the sales team is working that deal, trying to get a close one deal, it's looking at that credit. So as the marketing, when you're running your ad campaigns, that shift on strategy may be changing throughout that process. Whether instead of going more from like, hey, request a demo or get more information, this might be, hey, come sit in on this webinar with us and sit through this as we talk through like some of our solutions or dig into this and dig into the like strategy or other things associated to that. So that's where that last touch comes in, is allowing you to kind of look at what's that tipping point that's getting them into there. And then with multi-touch, this is a much broader net that's looking at across either a combination of the people that are associated with the deal, or like if you're running an account-based marketing strategy and you're marketing to all the people associated with a specific account or company. And so that multi-touch allows you to look at a variety of different touch points and combination of everything from first and last touch to tipping point, primary campaign, or just everything across within that life cycle of what the deal looked like. And that's where those come into play.
Right, great, thank you. So here are like some three popular multi-touch attribution models. Gavin, you just want to talk about those since we ended up talking about multi-attribution. Just talk a little bit about these types of models. Obviously, there are more than this, or you can create more than this, but these are three that probably people on the call have heard of or want to understand a little bit more about.
Yeah, definitely. So with an even spread model, this kind of goes back to that. These are all multi-touch models, but with an even spread, this is where you're giving effectively an even distribution of credit, either across the account and like all your contacts and leads that are associated to that account, or you're spreading it across whoever the like primary key decision makers and roles are associated with the opportunity. And so with the even spread, it allows you to effectively give an even distribution of credit and then break that into cohorts to identify, okay, at what stage of the process are these coming in, and what is the overall impact of our marketing, of our people responding to our marketing as a result of that coming across the deal. Whereas with like a U-shape or a W-shape model, these are a little bit more focused touch points. So with the U-shape model, this is looking at combining all of the attribution credit towards your first touch and your last touch. So what was the first? What are our first touch campaigns that are bringing in brand new people into the org, and then where's all of our credit going for our last touch campaigns that are coming in right before they create an opportunity within the org itself to be able to give that credit. So it's allowing you to kind of get a narrow focus on 2 key points on that customer journey and seeing what campaigns are having the most impact at that point. And then with a W-shaped model, it's incorporating both that first and last touch, but what's most importantly is that middle touch, that, or not necessarily the middle touch, but the inception point of when someone became qualified and started their funnel journey. Because when people respond to marketing campaigns and they download white papers, that might be their first touch. They may not be qualified. They might not be considered marketing qualified yet to begin that funnel tracking. So let's say someone downloads a white paper, they read some more information, and then they come back and they submit a demo request. And that demo request, whatever campaign drove them to that demo request page, be it like something from as simple as an organic Google search to clicking on a targeted LinkedIn ad, that's that inception point of where they first entered the funnel and became your in reality your true primary campaign source that started that funnel journey. And then we have the last touch on there that identifies what was that last campaign touch that these people engaged with prior to the opportunity creation. And so that's the difference between these multi-touch models.
Great, thank you. And I think in the context of data-driven cultures, this is about understanding that there are a wide variety of models, understanding what's important to your organization, and understanding that it's possible to run multiple models so that you can understand multiple things. It's not just a one-size-fits-all model. And I also just want to make sure that all of you were able to pay attention during that slide, that you weren't laughing too hard over my image of even spread model. I really enjoyed myself when I found somebody spreading what I thought would be peanut butter on a piece of bread for even spread model. So yeah, very, very good. Glad that didn't distract you too much, Gavin. Thank you. All right, let's see. So now we want to talk about this. So when we talk about these models, I think the one thing that's important is, Gavin can explain the models. You can read about models. You could go Google even spread model, U-shaped model, W-shaped model. But what's important when you're looking at these models is to understand that you need to understand how the model is scored. What pieces of our process, what campaigns, what actions, what information goes into the weighting of the model. And so when you decide, you're aligned, you've got your funnel, you understand the conversions and the velocities, and you're like, boy, this is really great, and everybody's expecting this information now. And now we're on to attribution, and we're expecting deep information through attribution models. And then someone's going to ask you next, how is this model scored? How is this number determined? How do you know that these pieces of marketing, that these interactions, these touch points were the ones that moved somebody forward? And unless you can go in and see how that model is scored, you're going to be, again, you're going to be back to that sweaty moment where you're like, sheesh, I can't really explain that. But so when you're looking at a model, when you're evaluating a software product, when you're talking to someone to develop a model, when somebody comes to you to ask you to develop a model, you're going to want to see this type of flexibility, right? So in that model number 1, for example, 12 points have been applied to this particular response in the campaign, but you can see here on model number 1, for example, where those points were applied. So Gavin, I think, other than my high level description of, hey, you should know where a model is scored, what's important that people need to know about understanding that model scoring and why it shouldn't be a black box? Like, talk through that for us a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So why this becomes really, really relevant in identifying exactly, how your attribution is being calculated is the ability to troubleshoot and verify the accuracy of your data. So like anything, every organization tries to instill processes on how their sales reps do things, but sometimes things slip through the cracks and it can cause discrepancies within the data. And so the ability to literally dig in and identify exactly, which campaigns are getting attribution credit in relation to your opportunities, but seeing like where those points are being applied allows you to verify that your data is truly accurate. Whereas if you have a black box where you don't have that transparency to go in and see this, you're just hoping like heck that everything's going okay. But the reality is things change over time, processes get overlooked, or something new a new process might have been set up where it's impacting something else and causing discrepancies within the data. So having that visibility to go in here is what's going to really ensure that you have accurate data and instill a lot of trust between the teams to say like, yes, we know this is accurate because we can verify it.
Yep. And that trust, again, if we think about the conversation here as culture, trust is one of those key elements of building a positive culture, right? I trust that we're aligned. I trust that you understand what I'm talking about. I trust that you're going to have the detail that we need, and I trust that the data is right. And so this is a big way to begin to build that culture too, right? So obviously it's getting the right people on the team, it's aligning the right people, but it's also having the tool to be able to say, yep, I trust that when you tell me about an attribution model, I trust that you know how it was built. I trust that you know how to understand the scoring of that model. So the next part that we want to talk about in terms of data-driven culture is how you present all this data then to your teams, right? Jason, you've told us a million times, align on funnel. Great, that's one meeting, we're done. We talked about getting those metrics. Okay, that's fine, I can calculate all those things, but what do I do with them once I calculate them? Or I've got attribution models, how do I then communicate that to the rest of the team so people understand? And that's a process that we tended to go through about planning and achieving, and evaluating and optimizing. And this process is key to a data-driven culture because it's how you communicate and it's how you talk to the rest of the business about your results. So we'll start briefly with planning, right? Planning can be simply a look at your funnel and a look at the conversion and the velocity, like we were talking about before when you saw the funnel and we went through those key metrics. On the left, you've got your funnel, volume of qualified leads, sales accepted leads, demos, sales qualified opportunities into one, right? And then as you go to the middle column, it's conversion of what's on the left to the next stage. And then if you go to the right column, you're talking about velocity of stage to stage. So Gavin, thought here around, let's look down our funnel first and let's look across the funnel for the conversions as our second step. Any commentary here?
Yeah, and the key piece, another key piece of this that really helps add insight to this data is because what this is here, this is historical data looking at across all of your leads, contacts, and opportunities. And so what you're seeing is the history of what percentage of your MQLs are converting to SAL, how many of those are converting into demos and SQOs and close won deals. And when you have this data available, the thing to keep in mind is how to leverage this in relation to projections on reaching revenue goals. And so that's where when you're identifying this, you're effectively saying, okay, hey, we know what our conversion rates are, we know how long it takes a deal to get through pipeline. So now that we have this information, we can accurately forecast and say, okay, hey, we've been given a goal of $10 or $20 million within like the next quarter. So what we need to do is say, okay, what's our average deal size? Divide that revenue goal by the average deal size, and then work backwards through each of these funnel stages through the conversion rates to be able to determine, okay, hey, based on the amount of time it takes to get through pipeline, how many deals do we need to have in pipeline by this time in order to make sure we're on track to reach that revenue goal?
That's right. And my guess is everybody who's on the call who's in marketing operations has had that experience. Show me the funnel, give me a top-down or a bottoms-up analysis of our funnel as we need to enter the next period of time. And that's challenging if you're exporting data from Salesforce, if you're using data from leads, and if you're using data from contacts, it becomes a big data collection and data cleansing process rather than a true analysis process. So that's why looking at your data and structuring your data in a way like this can make it so effective. So then we want to look at achieving, right? That's the next question that everybody asks. It's the one that leaves us scratching our heads, which is where are we to those goals? Where are we to our revenue goal, right? And because we're now looking at leads, contacts, all in Salesforce on a dashboard, we can now are able to build a set of reporting and dashboards that drive insight. Here's where we are to our goals. I know for a fact that it takes a lot of time to generate this kind of information. And I know for a fact that once you get the number, you check it with the sales team. Then you go back to the marketing team. Then you go back to the sales team. Then you enter your quarterly business review thinking, which number am I going to use? Because I actually have two different ones on the marketing deck and on the sales deck. Right? This is a view of that data when we're talking about data-driven culture that helps us understand we've got one view. There's one number. There's one source of truth here, and that is how we know whether we're achieving our plan. And then, Gavin, I think the next piece that's so important to talk about here is optimizing to hit the plans, right? So once we know what's happening, we've created a plan, we know where we are to that plan, how do we optimize? Because that's what we want to do with all this data. We want to use this to make ourselves better. So how do you talk through optimizing and the set of data around how to optimize?
Yeah, definitely. So the thing I always start around with the data for how to optimize is starting at the top of the funnel. So within here, because it's working off this single source of truth that combines both sales engagement with marketing, we can see exactly how many MQLs have been generated month over month. But what's cool about this is this actually allows us to start with, like, at the very beginning of that process of, do we have MQLs that were generated a couple months ago that nobody's touched and are just sitting there? And so this is where you get to have that engagement of, like, starting at the very beginning and say, okay, hey, sales, back in June of 2023, we sent you guys 800 MQLs, and it looks like there's still 150 in here that are still in MQL. So these either need to be dispositioned out of the funnel so they're not hurting our conversion and our velocity metrics, or they need to be advanced into the pipeline and followed up on. And so these are really, excuse me, these are really good insightful metrics, and then breaking it down to, like, who's the owner of those and so on. But then it digs down further into, like, disposition reasons. So if something's been kicked out of the funnel, we want to know why. So if you're a marketer and you've generated 1,000 MQLs from a certain campaign, and you notice that 750 of them have been dispositioned, and the disposition reason is that, it was a student that filled out a form. That might not be your target ICP, might not be students. So that's a really good indication directly back to the marketing team to say, hey, we generate all these MQLs, they got kicked out, here's exactly why. So this may mean that we need to adjust our targeting metrics. And then going down further, where we can start really digging into conversion rates, going from like MQL to SAL, and then how long it's taking to go through there. This is where you can identify trends. So if you're noticing things like your volume's going way up, but your velocity is also going way up, where it's just taking longer to get through funnel, this may be an indication, hey, we might not have enough sales reps on hand to be able to process all these leads, or hey, maybe we're not notifying our internal team in the right way to get these through pipeline, or our velocity might be going really up because they may not be quality leads, and they're having a hard time going through there and making that assessment. So this is where you can start kind of digging into the details at every stage of the funnel and say, okay, hey, why was this kicked out at the stage of, like, opportunity creation for this, or why is our velocity rate going way up, or why is our velocity rate going way down, and build out trend lines. So you can identify things along the lines of everything from seasonality to like industry standards and basics. Like we're working with a customer not too long ago, and they work in education, and their turnover for budget typically starts in June of every year. So they have a huge influx of MQLs and everything else. So that's when they know when they need to make optimizations around that. Versus other industries that work in various different areas of tech or B2B, they may have different seasonality as well. So this is where you can really kind of break down and make those assessments to and have those data informed metrics to be able to continually improve your processes. So,
And that's what marketing teams and sales teams are also expecting out of marketing operations, right? That type of insight just drives more attention to the marketing operations team and on their understanding of the data and the understanding of the business. So this is a key area and a key view for understanding your data and creating that data culture. And then as we evaluate programs and actions, right? This is the type of dashboard where you'd look and you'd see on the left, you'd see top campaigns by attribution. Right below that, you'll see campaigns where you had the most closed lost or the most lost revenue. You know, you'd be being able to look at these metrics and say, I can really now evaluate which programs work the best. I know, Gavin, there's a lot of in-depth stuff here, but that's pretty much what we're showing here, right? Understanding and evaluating in a very more of an at a glance way what's going on with our data and with our campaigns.
yeah, exactly. And what it ultimately comes down to, because with this evaluating, is effectively seeing which campaigns are having the greatest impact on your revenue as an organization. And so, you know, if you're noticing, hey, we have some campaigns that are influencing a ton of revenue, but those are really those are really high dollar amount deals, and they might only have one or two deals, versus other campaigns are impacting a lot of revenue, but it's associated to smaller dollar value deals. That's where you can identify that and say, okay, hey, we can, you know, directly correlate this back to our marketing strategy and say, hey, you know, if we want to push more of this product that's at a higher dollar amount, this is what we need, where we need to be making that investment in our time and resources, versus, hey, we notice that we're getting a ton of revenue out of this. It's smaller dollar amounts, but it's helping us hit our revenue metrics, versus you might have something that's underperforming and may need to be either, you know, sunsetted or improved in some way.
So another really important area that people look to marketing operations for. There's so much data here. Help me understand what's going on. And this is the type of data, these are the types of views that can really help that marketing operations team tell that story. And that's kind of a summary of how we build a data-driven marketing culture, right? So we want to build that data-driven culture. We covered practice data-driven behavior. We covered valuing strategic data use. We covered encouraging sharing and community, right? When you get a set of data in a dashboard, that's the kind of stuff that you need to share, and that builds community. That trust builds that community. And then we want to put the data at the center of our marketing story, right? Which is what we were just talking about. How do you optimize? How do you evaluate? Right? That's the center of our marketing story. The raw numbers about volume here and there, those are important to have because they do tell a story in and of themselves. But how are we then using that data to optimize the future, to evaluate today, to optimize the future? And then how are we choosing the right KPIs? That's going to be how we plan, how we understand our goal achievement, and then, like I said, how we optimize and evaluate those programs. So that's building a data-driven marketing culture. It starts with understanding building culture. It moves to aligning the teams around what's important and having a unified understanding. And then it goes into delivering on that data and telling a story with that data. Thank you, everybody, for participating today and being on our webinar. We do these monthly, so check out our December 13th webinar, which will be all about New Year's resolutions. How do you set and achieve ambitious marketing goals in the new year? You can go to fullcircleinsights.com, register for this webinar on the 13th, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you, Gavin, for being on the panel, and thanks everybody else for spending your time with us today. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.